What's going on, guys? It's Jimmy here. Are you seeing your electricity prices spike and gas prices spike here across the US? Well, that is what we're seeing, and we're probably going to expect it even more for even longer. Take a look at what is happening here right now. Yeah, the Texas power prices surge 800% here this weekend amid searing heat. 800%. Yeah, and we're seeing this here in a lot of different areas, but 800% is absolutely just mind blowing. You can't make this stuff up, guys. Take a look here at what happened. Yeah, electricity prices for the grid rose to more than $2,500 per megawatt for Sunday evening, up from Saturday's high of about $275. That is a drastic difference. According to data from the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, the grid operator, this almost seems criminal to see prices go from $275 per megawatt to $2,500 per megawatt. But that is what is happening in Texas. The surplus of available power capacity on the grid versus power consumption will narrow to 1.6 gigawatts in the hour ending at 6 p.m. Sunday, a level that can trigger emergency responses. Though ERCOT has additional reserves, it can tap to meet demand. Yeah. Texas grid keeps power on with aid of alerts when demand soars. ERCOT has issued a weather watch for Sunday and Monday due to forecast higher temperatures, higher demand, and potential lower reserves, the grid operator said in an emailed statement Saturday afternoon. ERCOT will continue to monitor conditions closely. Most of the state is under a heat advisory with large swaths of it under excessive warning, according to the National Weather Service. Dallas, Texas alone may see temperatures rise to 107 degrees Fahrenheit, with a heat index of 111 for the second consecutive day. Wow. State officials warned residents to take precautions as they seek to mitigate the risk of extreme heat. Power usage on Sunday is expected to peak at 84.4 gigawatts. Sounds like something out of Back to the Future, right? At about 4 p.m. But it is not until later, when the solar generation starts to wane at sunset, that the supplies begin to tighten. Yeah, and it's actually a good thing for the solar, because without the solar extra supply of energy, a lot of these states would really be in trouble. This year especially, nearly 5,000 heat and rainfall records have since been broken since June, putting pressure on electric grids. You can see another thing here. Solar power to the rescue as Europe's energy system weathers extreme heat. You can see here a major increase in solar power generation in Southern Europe plays a leading role in averting energy sources during the heat waves of recent weeks, when temperatures broke records and drove unprecedented demand for air conditioning. Solar power is particularly suited to coping with summer heat, as the sun's radiation is strongest around the hottest part of the day, when electricity demand for cooling is also at its highest. The very significant growth in solar basically compensates for the peaks that are caused by air conditioning. Spain and Greece are among the countries that have installed many more solar panels in the face of record high energy prices last year, and the quest for increased energy security linked to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Spain added a record 4.5 gigawatts of solar photovoltaic capacity last year, resulting in solar energy output in July, typically one of the sunniest months. That was higher than any month to date, Hispanic electricity grid operator said. Plus, with gas prices rising now almost nonstop, it feels like. Remember, we're seeing U.S. gas prices rise about 30 cents here just recently. Um, Remember, solar costs don't rise. You put up wind turbines, the costs don't rise. Once they're up, there's almost no cost. You put a solar panel up, you put up a wind turbine, very little cost going forward. You maybe have to replace a panel or a blade every decade or something like that. You don't have to replace them very often. You put gas in your car or gas in your house, how long does it last? A week? Yeah, and remember, they're just constantly raising the prices of this stuff. Now, of course, we can't rely on just solar. We can't rely on just wind. We can't rely on just gas. We can't rely on just diesel. We need all of this stuff, right? All of this stuff is what we need. And we need gas as well. We need diesel. We need natural gas. We need all of this stuff. But the problem with gas is that the prices continue to go higher. And if you just see my video on OPEC Plus, Russia, and Saudi Arabia, they have cut production by 3 million barrels right now per day, and to jack up the prices. And we're seeing the pain right now. Take a listen.
Joining us now to talk about the energy sector is Amrita Sen, Energy Aspects founder and director of research. Amrita, it's good to see you. This is starting to get more attention, especially politically. Where are gas prices headed?
Yes, there's been some political kind of tensions bubbling, but the reality is we've been long expecting this move up in oil prices. The macro, I would still say, is a little bit uncertain. It's not like all flashing green lights, but fundamentals have turned. We're seeing very, very steep stock draws, particularly on the product side, and you've seen that effect on pump prices in the U.S. Gasoline prices have been edging higher, and we still think the overall system is pretty precarious given how low inventories are. So we are expecting to see prices, at least gasoline prices, staying higher at the pump for a while.
And like you said, this would hardly surprise energy analysts who for a while have been saying just simple supply and demand would point to higher prices. Do you agree with those who said the weakness in the first 6 months of the year was a lot of destocking, inventory liquidation, maybe obviously a little bit of the China factor as well? I mean, why were we so tame for so long?
Yeah, I think that was probably one of the things we kind of were one of the first to talk about the destocking theories, and we've put out a lot of pieces around that. And I'll give you a great example. Cushing in the US, which is where WTI is priced off, we've actually seen WTI or Cushing inventories draw by over 8 million barrels in July, even though the market was in contango. And that shows you that even a shallow contango, which in the past would have been an incentive to store oil, wasn't enough because of the higher cost of capital. People were actually destocking crude. So I think this is happening everywhere. We've seen this across products as well. And I think that has been a big reason why we hadn't moved up in the first 6 months of the year. But ultimately, destocking is finite, right? There is only that much inventories people have. And we are pretty much running through, or we've run through most of that right now. So yeah, we should expect to see prices kind of remaining supported.
To me, that is fascinating. I want to make sure that people caught what you just said. Higher interest rates could potentially result in higher oil prices, because right now, even though the futures price is higher than where we are, it's more expensive to store it because of the cost of capital. So people, instead of storing crude and kind of saying, great, I'll take advantage of the longer prices, saying, well, I can't afford to because the cost of capital is too high. So they're destocking. And now where are we with inventory levels, broadly speaking? I mean, is this sustainable? And if we have to both kind of support demand and restock, what does that imply?
I think that's a great question. I think that is where the real conundrum is, because it's too expensive to store. And that's why, if you look at gasoline and diesel, for instance, inventories just haven't built. If anything, they've drawn, which is why what we've seen is anytime there's a refinery fire or refinery outage, you have these massive moves higher in gasoline and diesel prices. Crude, because of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve release we saw throughout last year and a little bit this year as well, there is more of a buffer. We still have somewhat of an excess to run down, which we are running down very quickly. By the end of this year, we do think we would have run that down. So there's still a little bit of time, which does expose us to higher prices for next year.
Wow.
Amrita, in terms of the gasoline production, I know you've done some work about refinery volumes and what the sort of extreme heat in parts of this country have meant for that, and how is that driving prices, if at all?
It's been the refining system as a whole, right? It's been really precarious. It's interesting because this year we have had a bunch of new starts in the Middle East, or they were supposed to start. Of course, they were delayed again, but some of them are up and running. But we haven't seen the rest of the world really operate fully, US in particular, but even heat in Europe, even in Japan and Asia as a whole. We've just seen so many unplanned outages, particularly with the heat. Refineries have had to constrain their operating rates in Europe, for instance. But also there's been a real crude diet issue. A lot more light crude is coming out, mainly from the US. And in the summer, it gets really problematic for refineries to process that, especially in this heat, because you get a lot more naphtha, which, again, without getting too technical, has been very, very weak because of the China property market. So there's been some real headaches for refiners, and that's exactly why pump prices have just been so stubbornly high and have been rising, because we just haven't been able to produce enough gasoline.
So I was asking, I think it was Bob McNally last week. I said, when do you think are we going over $4? He said, absolutely, it's just a matter of time in terms of the national average. What would you say about that?
Yeah, I do think, I mean, look, the good news for consumers is that we are going towards the winter specification, which is obviously less stringent. So obviously summer prices in the US for gasoline always tend to be higher. So that's the silver lining for consumers. But in general, yes, I do agree, we are definitely headed towards higher gasoline prices, at least in the next few weeks, because not only is crude rising, but outright gasoline inventories are still low and demand is still okay.
Yeah, so as you can see here, they think we're going up to higher gas prices no matter what happens. And this is the problem. We have countries and companies just constantly trying to rake us over the coals. And it's not just us, it's people all around the world here that are just going to be getting raked over the coals here for this. And this will not just drive up only high gas prices, but high food prices, high good prices, and everything, because remember, those transportation charges are built into food. It's actually a large percentage of food prices. Everything has got to get shipped to the stores, shipped from the farms to the, to the grocery stores, or even to the distributors and stuff like that. There's sometimes multiple transportation charges in there. And it's just going to be a constant battle. And then you have conglomerates, multi-country conglomerates like OPEC Plus, which is Saudi Arabia, Russia, and all of the Middle Eastern countries over there, which have cut the 3 million barrel per day production cut, which is right now a little bit more than 30% of all of the United States production. And we're the largest oil producer in the world, but Saudi Arabia and Russia are number 2 and number 3. And it's a constant battle. It's a constant battle, which will mean that oil and gas, natural gas, diesel, all these different oil and gases will constantly stay high. And, some people point back to, the dollar, some gas prices that we had when the pandemic plummeted. That was really a temporary price that only happened for a very short time, which really wasn't a real price. It happened when production plummeted, when the pandemic shut the country down, so to say, and then came back up as the country came back to life, so to say. Gas prices weren't like that before the pandemic shut down. And this is the natural norm, is that OPEC Plus, Saudi Arabia are going to constantly be fighting against the United States and the rest of the world. If you've seen my chart here that I mentioned here the other day, this is our oil output here per day. We're getting close to our pre-pandemic supply of how much oil we're producing. We're producing 12.2 million barrels per day. Our pre-pandemic high ever was 13 million barrels per day. And then it dropped dramatically when the pandemic hit. We went all the way down here to 10.5 million at one point, or all the way down to 9.7 million at one point. You know, but we're producing more barrels per day than the day Joe Biden came into office, which was around here 10.9 million barrels per day. We're producing 12.2 million barrels per day. But again, we're competing against OPEC and OPEC plus, Russia and Saudi Arabia, who have cut 3 million barrels per day. So worldwide is that they're trying to and successfully are keeping gas prices higher than what they would be because of supply and demand. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'll keep you up to date here with everything going on here in our country on a daily basis. If you haven't yet, subscribe down below, click the bell icon, and thank you so much for liking and sharing these videos. Click here to see the massive change that Walmart, Target, and Kroger are making, or a video I just did on nuclear doomsday coming and the major warning they're making now. So click on one of those videos next. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.